special, we are going to dive in to the chemistry of macronutrients in continuance with our discussion from the first episode. We are going to dive into specifically the chemistry of proteins, carbs, and fats in order to help you eat anything you want while still maintaining a healthy lifestyle by leveraging a few principles that I have discovered over the years. Now, as you can see, I have some sugar, and sugar is not necessarily a bad thing when eaten in the proper context. So we're going to help you leverage a few chemical principles in order to help you stay healthy. So, that being said, welcome to Chemistry of Macronutrients. Awesome. To start off this presentation, we will overview a few categories of concern, which are the categories of macronutrients, color, timing, type of food, total calories as related to calories from insert macronutrient here, and the information on the nutrition facts label. If you are ever presented with a food you are not familiar with and want to eat it, it is best to consult the nutrition facts label, and we will dissect the nutrition facts label in this presentation as well. Beginning with the first category of concern, macronutrients. Macronutrients are subclassified as protein, carbs, or fat. Beginning with protein, proteins are comprised of amino acids, which are subdivided into essential versus non-essential. Essential amino acids are the amino acids which the body cannot produce naturally and must be consumed by food. Moving on to carbs, carbs are either simple or complex, and the simple carbs are more readily broken down by your body and converted into fat if this energy isn't used. Carbohydrates are also known as sugar, and sugar is colloquially sold as sucrose, which is a simple sugar. Finally, fats are used for energy storage and exist as saturated, unsaturated, and omega classified. The second to last, unsaturated, is better for you as it can be broken down easier by the body, and omega classified are good for your brain health. Proteins have 4 calories per gram, carbs have 4 calories per gram, and fats have 9 calories per gram. Next, we're going to move on to color, of which there are black, white, and rainbow. Beginning with black or dark foods. Dark foods tend to be pretty good for you and have a bitter taste, yet they contain antioxidants. Generally speaking, of course, there are some exceptions to the rule, and there are other factors to be considered. White foods are usually of the grain food category and are also tend to be sweet and of the simple carbohydrates. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Simple carbohydrates do not equate to bad. And sugar is also white. And so as someone who personally loves sugar, I will never tell you that sugar is a bad thing. Oh my goodness, I love sugar. Now, going to the rainbow, which is red, yellow, orange, green, and blue. These colors tend to be of the type of fruits and vegetables, and they can also contain antioxidants and other micronutrients that are good for you. And also they tend to be of complex carbohydrates. Thus, I will never tell you that a rainbow of food is bad for you. Green foods are extremely good for you in particular. as they contain antioxidants and are complex carbohydrates. And so, of course, going off the color of the food alone is not particularly advised. So let's transition along to the timing of food. Next, let's transition to timing with respect to amounts or portion sizes of each macronutrient, keeping in mind that the color can help you determine what food specifically to eat. And we will dive into this more specifically later on, actually rather soon. First and foremost, it is important to keep an even distribution of macronutrients. So, for example, instead of eating or consuming 90 grams of protein in one sitting, your body will better process that macronutrient in 3 separate grams or 3 separate meals of 30 grams of protein, similar to carbohydrates. Still, if you want immediate energy and you're about to consume or execute exercise, you might as well just go ahead and load up on carbs, about 30 to 45 grams of carbs. It's cool. This is my personal intake. Keep in mind that I am a 235-pound male who is muscular. Now, with fats when not used will be converted to fat on your body. So it is important to, if you already consume fat, make sure you use that regularly within, I would say, about 24 to 48 hours just to be safe. Granted that some people might not agree with this, but keep in mind, contextualizing this, I am a person who exercises very intensely, and I do encourage you to do the same. However, I recognize that some people just exercise as a method to get their heart rate up for 30 minutes a day, and that's totally fine. Still, I would suggest to consume a lot of complex carbohydrates when not about to exercise, and then consume simple carbohydrates when about to exercise. Another strategy I like to use is to consume simple carbohydrates during the morning and lunch period, and then solely complex carbohydrates after about 3 o'clock, and then only for dinner. Still, everybody has their own personal preference, so find out what works for you, and you can always email me or leave a comment on this video and say, hey, what would you recommend? And I will always give you my honest opinion that is empirically valid. Still, protein intake 20 to 30 minutes before exercise is good, and I recommend that amount to be about 30 grams. Even further, about 30 minutes after exercise, I would suggest to consume about 30 grams of protein again, because that's the time you have for muscle recovery. Oh, keep in mind that in reality, you have about an hour to 2 hours, which I just recently learned from taking the nutrition certification for muscle recovery. So it's not super imperative to take protein and ingestion right after you work out, but sometime within the 1 hour, 2 hour window, you should be taking an ingested protein. Now let's transition into the types of food. You've got grains, fruits and vegetables, animal foods a la protein, nuts and seeds a la protein, fish a la protein, sweets, and then colloquially carbs. We're going to go from bottom up just to make things interesting because I like to live life on the edge. Ha ha ha. That's my sense of humor. It's not funny. I recognize that. Colloquial carbs are what's understood as bread, mashed potatoes, French fries. Even grains might be considered colloquial carbs. What else might we consider to be colloquial carbs? Rice, things of that nature are going to be colloquially understood as carbs. And these are not necessarily a bad thing. As mentioned earlier, when you time them right, you can eat literally whatever you want. Generally, I like to eat carbs in the morning because it gives all day for my body to burn off that fat. Unless I'm about to do a lot of exercise, in which I will consume them quite readily before in order to get that energy access that I like to have. Next, let's transition to sweets. As you saw in the beginning of this video, I was consuming sugar. And man, was it good. I love sugar. Keep in mind that sugar can be detrimental and converted into fat if not readily used, which is why I like to go walking a lot. Not that much exciting of an exercise, but it does get my heart rate up for 30 minutes a day because I go up hills and I go down hills. I go up hills again. So just contextualizing that. Sweets are not necessarily a bad thing. Still, I would not eat a entire thingamajig of sugar and then only eat 1-2 leaves of vegetables. That would not make any sense. I would expect to gain weight if I did that. So it's important to just contextualize. Obviously, today is a Saturday, so it is a day where such a meal or such a treat might be appropriate. Next, let's transition into fish. Fish is a great source of protein, and not only are fish great sources of protein, they are great sources of omega fats, of which there are 3. Omega-3, 6, 9. 3, 6, 9. Yeah. Yin yang. Oh boy. Yeah. I had to say that. I had to say that. So, if you're going to eat protein and you want good fats for your brain to stay healthy, go for the fish. Fish are a great source of protein and the good source of fat, which are the omega classified fats, which are also unsaturated. Next, let's go to nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are a great source of protein for those of you all who like to eat a vegan diet meal or even a vegan burger. That'd be a great source of protein. From my understanding, these sources of protein do not have the amino acid leucine, which our body does not make. And animal foods do have leucine. So that's why animal foods like chicken. Oh yeah, chicken. Oh no, what else? I love chicken. So what else is there besides chicken? Animal foods like chicken, beef, pork, bacon. These have that leucine, which is so conducive to muscle hypertrophy. Next we go to fruits and vegetables. And fruits and vegetables are complex carbohydrates. And of the color, with regard to color, it is of the rainbow, like we said before. So yeah, your peppers, carrots, blueberries, red berries, or raspberries rather, blackberries. You got your grapes, your baby spinach, your Regular spinach or broccoli, it's good for your health. Whatever vegetables and fruits you like, carbohydrates, and then unsaturated fats. Grains like bread. Once again, colloquially understood carbs. Grains can be white or wheat, and not one is more preferred over the other. It just depends on the timing of the food, as we discussed earlier. Now, let's talk about the structure of these macronutrients before we go to total calories as related to calories from either protein, carbs, or fat. And for this, we are going to consult one of the most reputable sources on the internet, Wikipedia. Let's do it. All right, so as you can see in the title of the tab, remember we talked about that in episode 1, we have the amino acid, carbohydrate, and fat, which constitute the subcategories of macronutrients. Each of these listed are macronutrients. Now, where these lines intersect, there is understood to be a carbon here. That's just basic organic chemistry. It's pretty chill. Now, as you might imagine, there is a method to the madness of calling the amino acids that name. It is a combination of an amino group and a carboxyl functional group, along with a side chain specific to each amino acid. And do not worry, I did not just pull that out of thin air. I literally just read this first sentence of the Wikipedia article. Awesome. And so, all of these amino acids are going to have an amino group and a carboxyl group and a hydrogen. And what the only variant is the R group. And in organic chemistry, an R group is just known for a quick way to say, hey, we don't want to draw this out in its entirety, and it can be of varying functional group or side chain group. And so in this case, it can be one of 20 different things, and we will get to those 20 different things right now. And so, side chains. There are 21 amino acids. I believe I said 20 earlier. I was mistaken. There are 21. And so, going down the chain, we can just see them all listed out here. But we're really the takeaway I want you to get is the essential versus not essential. So we're gonna see what's going on here. And so there you go. The non-essential amino acids are histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. It's probably valine, excuse me. And so, essential amino acids cannot be made by the body. As a result, they must be coming from food. Cool. Now, non-essential amino acids means our body can produce that amino acid even if we do not get them from the food we eat. These include alanine, arginine, asparagine, aspartic acid, cysteine, glutamic acid, glutamine, glycine, proline, serine, tyrosine. Finally, conditional amino acids are usually not essential in times of illness and stress. Conditional amino acids include arginine, cysteine, glutamine, tyrosine, glycine, ornithine, proline, and serine. You do not need to eat additional amino. Say that 5 times fast. You do not need to eat essential and non-essential amino acids at every meal, but getting a balance of them over the whole day is important. A diet based on a single plant item will not be adequate, but we no longer worry about pairing proteins at a single meal. Instead, we look at the attitude of the diet overall throughout the day. Interesting. So basically, it's saying about a few years back, probably like early 2000s, people would be like, okay, like rice and beans, right? Rice and beans, rice and beans. That way, you get that complete amino acid complementation. But now it's understood that it's more important to evenly distribute that diet over throughout the whole day, which I was saying earlier. So it's important to get new information and then actually use that information instead of saying, okay, no, I like it this way. Let's stick to the script. Thus, if I ever get some new information, I'll be like, okay, like, look, I might have said this before, but I was mistaken, just like I did earlier. For example, I didn't know what conditional amino acids were before I read this. I was like, whoa, this is interesting. So, that being said, let's transition to carbohydrates. So, carbohydrates look like this. This is what a carbohydrate looks like. And this is a simple carbohydrate. Once again, when the lines intersect, these are simple. These are understood to be carbons here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Glycosidally linked with 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, it's 6. Sweet. So this is a disaccharide. And what's a disaccharide? It's simply two monosaccharides linked together, of which sucrose is one, which is why I said, look, this is a simple sugar, because it's disaccharides. Let's go to monosaccharide article real quick. They don't have a picture. Oh, they do. So this is what a monosaccharide looks like, okay? And it's cyclic form and in its chain form. Notice that compositionally, it's still the same thing. It's just that structurally, they are different. So this is what a monosaccharide looks like, and that's a simple sugar. A disaccharide looks like this. That's what we saw earlier. This is what a disaccharide looks like. And so these monosaccharides and disaccharides, these are simple sugars, of which sucrose is one. So look, if you go to the sucrose article, you'll see it, look, 1, 2, disaccharide. Body's going to break these down way faster than an oligosaccharide, which is composed of 3 monomer units. And so a monomer unit is a molecular unit that can be repeated multiple times to constitute a bigger structure. And if you polymerize that structure enough, it becomes a polymer or a big macromolecule. So that's not the whole point of this discussion, but that's why it says degree of polymerization right here. So oligosaccharides, boom, 3 to 9. 3 to 9. Dang, she fine. Seriously though. This is an example. More examples of oligosaccharides, which would be considered complex carbohydrates, and then you have polysaccharides, which are starch. So starch, look, boom. You see, look, it goes 1. You have the outside, and you have the end, where this number indicates that this is being repeated between 300 and 600 times. That is what we call a polymer or a macromolecule. That is definitely a complex carbohydrate, and your body's going to take way longer to break that down than it would about sugars. And so look, amylopectin, I'm not sure what rapper said something about amylopectin, but basically, amylopectin. I'm not trying to be funny either. It's like, hey, basically, it just has a hard time breaking it down. So if you say starch, you say like, okay, like cornstarch, or like, look, potatoes, maize, rice, wheat, blah blah blah. Hey, so I might have been mistaken again. Maybe these potatoes are actually not white. Right here, complex carbohydrate. Body's gonna break them down. Sweet. It's always fun learning something new. Do 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 do. So look, disaccharide. Two joined monosaccharides are called a disaccharide, and these are the simplest polysaccharides. Examples include sucrose and lactose. They are composed of two monosaccharide units bound together by a covalent bond known as a glycosidic linkage. Be a dehydration reaction results in loss of hydrogen atoms from one monosaccharide and hydroxyl group from the other. Point is, look, 1, 2. How do you do? You're gonna get a break. You're gonna have to break those things down so quick. It's not even funny relative to the polysaccharides, which are complex carbohydrates. Let's see. Let's see what anything else I want to get from this. The standard usage, however, is to classify carbohydrates chemically. Simple if they are sugars, monosaccharides, and disaccharides, and complex if they are polysaccharides or oligosaccharides. This is important. In any case, the simple versus complex chemical distinction has very little value for determining the nutritional quality of carbohydrates. That's why I said, look, it doesn't matter. You saw me eating sugar in the beginning of this video. That's okay, as long as you contextualize when you eat it. There is a distinction between saying, okay, oh, all I want to do is eat complex carbohydrates. Oh, all I want to do is eat simple carbohydrates. It's okay. You have to know what works for you and your schedule. That's why I'm asking. What you do is you take examples from what I tell you that I eat from my schedule, and you contextualize it. Say, okay, like how does his schedule seem to be working relative to my schedule, and then how can I integrate this knowledge into my schedule? And I'm always happy to answer questions too. Like I'm not a mean person. I'm actually really nice. So look, that's why I'm saying, like, look, simple versus complex, it's no difference. It's all sugar. It's just a matter of how quickly they get broken down. That being said, let's transition to fat. So fats. Let's see. Saturated versus unsaturated. Boom. Saturated fat. Bada bing, bada bing. This is what a fat looks like. Okay. It's got a carboxylic acid, and it's usually on a glycerol background, but this is a saturated fatty acid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Look. So basically, this is understood to be saturated because, although not drawn out, there are hydrogens bound to this carbon right here. And so saturated means all the possible hydrogens that could be on this chain are on this chain, which is very important to understand, because these, although shown statically on the page, are rotating. And this is very important to understand why saturated fats aren't that good for you with the type of diet we're trying to implement. If you're trying to eat whatever you want, saturated fats can be kind of deadly if you eat them in excess. Because look, these can rotate and these can stick to each other. These can pile up on each other, which is why if it's high in saturated fat, it's hard for it to break down. Because look, these bonds are rotating and they're moving, and I'll try to find a picture of them. but these bonds are rotating and they can pile up on each other. Conversely, unsaturated fats. Structurally, let's see. Chemical structure. Structurally, okay, this is the glycerol backbone of which we spoke. Structurally, look, you see that, you see that there are double bonds here, right here. Boom, 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 boom. There is no rotation on these single bonds. Thus, it's going to be very difficult for these unsaturated fats to pile up on each other, whereby there will be space in between these unsaturated fats, and your body can easily break these down. Basically, it's like they say, like they're trying to divide us and conquer us. Yes, Mr. Unsaturated Fat, we are trying to divide and conquer you. That way we can eat more of you and not gain any weight and stay healthy. It's all about staying healthy. So don't let the scale fool you. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways, there's monounsaturated fats with one double bond, and polyunsaturated fat with more than one double bond. And so let's talk about this trans fat. Because when I was a little kid, they'd be like, yo, trans fat's so bad for you. Basically, some guy or some human came up with the idea to, like, I can't even remember the story, but basically, this person decided to make, this human decided to make trans fat. And so, look, typically, you see that the hydrogen absence is on the same side. However, with trans fat, they're on the opposite side. These are known as cis bonds. The trans bond will be on the other side. And trans fats are harder to break down because, look, you have the ability of a double bond, which are harder to break down, and the structural identity of a saturated fat, which is like a exponentially compounded problem for your body to break down, which is why trans fats are so bad. So I'm not sure who decided to make this trans fat thing, but they are bad. This is an example of a trans fat. Look, it looks like a saturated fat, except no, there is a double bond, and this double bond is going to be hard for your body to break down. So just keep that in mind. Whew. Scary. Finally, let's go to the omega fats. Omega 3,6, 369. Dang, she fine. So basically, fats are counted from the I want to say the carbon right here. I forget the name of the carbon. I think it's like carboxyl carbon or something like that. Carbonyl carbon, something like that. Basically, the carbon below the zero, below the O, below the O. I like that. We're gonna call it the carbon below the O. You count it below the O, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. However, instead of counting it from the carbon below the O, you count it from the end of the strand. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom, 3, 6, 9. Yin yang. That's how you know that this is omega-9 fatty acid. Let's try this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope. 7, 8. Nope. That's not a 3, 6, 9. Because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, this is 8. I'm sorry. Nope. Let's see if we can find a 3, 6, 9. Dang, she fine. I'm having too much fun with this, as you can tell. Seriously. Let's try omega 9. Well, Google's our friend. Omega-9 fatty acid. I'm too funny. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Maybe I'm counting. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No. Oh my goodness. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I was right. I'm sorry. Whoopsie. So basically, you begin at the end. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Awesome. So these are the 3, 6, 9 omega fats, and you begin by counting from the beginning at the end of the chain. So not from, but beginning at the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. Fun. And so that being said, that is a great overview of the structural identity of the macromolecules. And it's important to understand these because you're eating them every day, whether you realize it or not. That being said, I really want to emphasize this rotation along the single bond because it's so important to understand. It took me a long time myself to learn this in chemistry, and if you can learn this in chemistry, you'll be a genius before you recognize that you're a genius. Even though, hey, you already are a genius. Yeah. All right, seriously though, we're going to transition. As we mentioned earlier, fatty acids. So, imagine a good way to imagine this is in a hyperbolic context, meaning that there's just a bunch of these floating around. Okay, you got a bunch of these floating around. And then we're gonna pull up a polymer and just say there are like 300 of these floating around. So there are 300 of these floating around, right? And they are rotating. So along this axis, it has the ability to look like this. That makes sense because it's rotating. And so maybe one of these wants to fit like something like this. Oh, wait a second. Fits like this, and then it can just like swoopy swoop. Well, that was weird. So swoopy swoop, and then fit together like this, stacking up. That's what saturated fats have the ability to do. And similar with these, that's why trans fats are so bad, because it takes more energy to break a double bond than it does a single bond. It's, however, the structure of the unsaturated fats structurally that allows it to be broken down more conventionally than a saturated fat, because there is no rotation and they remain in that same conformation that we like to have. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit for you all. Back to our illustrated program. As I was taught when I was a kid, it's better to give examples as opposed to explaining a concept, and I feel like this concept is better illustrated with examples. So I have 2 superfoods here which I frequently consume in order to maintain a muscular physique. Now, these two superfoods are eggs and baby spinach. Awesome. Now, keep in mind that we are only examining the macronutrients here. Very important to keep in mind. Now, it's my personal preference to eat proteins first in a meal, then carbs, then fats, because something tells me that if I eat those in this order, that's the order in which they will be metabolized. And so what we have to do with these eggs is just dissect where the calories are coming from per serving. So if you can look closely here, there is 70 calories and 6 grams of protein. Keeping in mind that protein has 4 calories per gram, that means 24 of these 70 calories are coming from protein. That's about 33%. Good. Now, total fat, 5 grams. Multiplied by 9, that means 45. If you add 26 and if you add 25 and 45, that's 70. So it's safe to say that eggs are primarily fat and protein with very little carbs. Actually, no carbs, as indicated by the 0 grams. And so if you want to get a high protein, power-packed meal, go for the eggs. And so it's safe to say that we can also do a number whereby we do a ratio of calories to grams of protein. And so just for simplicity's sake, let's do 70 calories to 7 grams of protein. All of a sudden, it's a 10-to-1 ratio of 10 calories per 1 gram of protein. And what does that mean? That means that 4 calories of protein are coming from every 10 calories total. Very important to keep in mind. This is hypothetically. So that's just important to keep in mind. And then eventually you'll get used to understanding like what foods you go to for what macronutrient. For example, I'm always going to go for eggs for the protein and fat. And then I'll just run, you know? So, no big deal. I'll usually do anaerobic exercise. Now, this one's a little tricky. You've got 20 calories and 3 grams of carbohydrate. And you know these are complex, not only by the color, but by the texture as well. Because look, if you have a billion of over 1,000 sugars repeating, the polymer is going to be amorphous. And so this translates into a leafy structure that is amorphous in structure on a macro level. And so it's always good to have a good sense of going from molecular to macro. Like how do these things translate? For example, disaccharide are really crisp. and really rigid, which is why you see the sugars in a little sugar grains, so those are a little crisp. Whereas these starches are more amorphous. Would it be fair to do a sugar thing without doing a leaf thing? So, now, total carbohydrate, 3 grams. So that means times 4, that's 12, and then protein times 2 grams of protein, that's 20. So calories per gram are just straight up carbohydrates and protein. Now we know by the color that it's a complex carbohydrate. And so we have access to this energy longer. It's going to take our body longer for it to digest. And I want you to keep in mind that in terms of consuming foods, it's about the volume of food you consume. And so look, if you have a liter of this versus a liter of eggs, you're still going to get full. It's just that the calories you consume will be less for the baby spinach because it has a lower density. So it's just very important to keep that in mind. And so these are generally 2 superfoods because look, low density, that means high volume, very little calories. And so you can eat a lot of these baby spinaches and still have low caloric intake and still get full with low caloric intake. So it's a great tip to lose weight, just eat a lot of baby spinach. It's got a lot of fiber, so you'll digest it well. So with those, it's just a simple formula to exemplify how you calculate the total calorie intake versus where these calories are coming from. And so we're going to do one more. Pause. We're going to do Greek yogurt. And so you see that there are 100 calories per serving. And carbohydrate, 6 grams. Now this is a color white. So what's that going to be? Simple carbohydrates. As you can see, it says total sugars, 6. So that means that is a disaccharide. When it has a label, it means disaccharide. Then protein, 18 grams per serving, times 4, 72. And then 6 times 4, 24. It's about 100. And so, just yet another example of a good superfood for protein. And so, basically, if you have more muscle, you can burn fat on your body easier, and you don't have to exercise as much because you build muscle. So that's why I do exercises that build muscle. I don't have to do that much cardio, even though cardio is important for cardiovascular health. Just something to keep in mind. So, that being said, the nutrition label, this is generally what it looks like. It has nutrition facts, has the amount of servings per container, the serving size. So 3/4 of a cup times 7 servings per container, a little bit of stoichiometry here. It's about 21/4 of a cup. So it's about 5 1/4 cups. Calories 100. Total fat 0 grams. So it'll have a total fat and then it'll have like the saturated fat. And so if you have, for example, if this is 10 total fat and the saturated fat is 5, that means the remainder of that fat comes from unsaturated fat. It does not say it explicitly. No foods will ever have trans fat. It's illegal. They just have to put that there's trans fat there to people to keep people who grew up understanding what trans fat was, kind of from being paranoid. Cholesterol. There's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. High density cholesterol is, I believe, the type that's good for you, and low density cholesterol is the type that's bad for you. Sodium. Sodium is an electrolyte, and too much of it is bad for you, but as long as you break a sweat, get your heart rate up 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week, you're good to go. Total carbohydrate. Once again, if this is 6 grams and total sugar says 6 grams, that means all 100% of these carbohydrates are coming from mono and disaccharides. So you have to keep that in mind. And then protein is just 18 grams. Keep in mind that leucine and isoleucine are the big muscle synthesis generators and must be consumed directly from animal protein as far as I understand. So that keep that in mind. All in all, I hope that you all have enjoyed going over the categories of concern, which are macronutrients, color, timing, type of food, and total calories as related to calories from insert macronutrient here. If you are ever presented with a food you have not seen before and want to eat it, it is best to consult the nutrition facts label. And we have just dissected the nutrition facts label through 3 case studies. Overall, it is important to realize that I am not a doctor, and this presentation should not be used in lieu for substitution for a doctor's advice. However, I feel that many people are not going to explain these nuances and these intangibles as straightforward as I have. So I hope that it can be some use to you. If anything, I want you all to take away the fact that food is more than just a status symbol. It's more than just a life preserver. It is information. You are telling your body how to behave by the foods you eat. And you are telling your body what to look like by the foods you eat. So if this chemistry of macronutrients presentation has done you any service, I hope that you realize that food is information. And if you have a bad relationship with food, please consult a doctor and know that you can change your relationship with food anytime, any day. I used to suffer from a binge eating disorder, and I was 275 pounds. I'm 230 pounds right now, and I feel like I'm in some of the best shape of my life. So I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And I mean, hey, like, nobody's perfect. So this is a safe space. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. If there's something you didn't get, please contact me.